Hello, world. The living room is full of shooting gear and resting dogs. Frida Reba Darcy here, and Patricia O'Connor. And today we're going to go out on the Bonsai balcony because it is a beautiful Sunday. We got people out enjoying the jacuzzi and out enjoying the tub. The temperatures are probably in the low 70s. It's a really nice day out. And I thought I was looking at something the other day, and I thought we would do that. While we were doing our next bench tour or whatever. So I'm going to do a little bud selection on this guy here in just a minute. While we're here, this is a little better look at the Shari. Shari is a Deadwood feature where you peel back the bark and expose it so that it can get like some silver line. I also did kind of doing this through the lens like y'all are seeing it. I also did one here. Now that's supposed to turn silver like exposed trunks do when they're all bleached out and stuff. And the idea is to try to turn those wire scars, maybe give somebody the illusion that they're looking at a spiraled trunk that is just swole up to where the negative space is all closed up, exposing just these spirals. And during this time of the spiral, that part as it was coming around was maybe exposed to UV. You can kind of see that. I've actually seen that on some Yamadoris, not even Yamadoris necessarily, just some ponderosas and some junipers and stuff that are up in the canyons. When they get bent, sometimes the exposed side kills the bark, and they've got this cool Deadwood feature. But then as it turns around and twists, that just grows with the exposure. So that's kind of, I'm happy with the way that came out. I'm looking forward to this guy flushing out a lot more. When it gets a little bit fuller, I reduced the buds on that. It had a bud count up there that had just gotten out of sight. And these were going to make enormous clubs on the ends, big, huge nodule looking things on the end of those branches if I'd have let that continue. But it wasn't a bad look. I kind of liked it, in the same way that this little guy, you can't really see that much of the branch there. But in this case, the trunk is what that's coming off of. And it's still, that's all well behaved. But on the, whereas on this guy, I didn't think we didn't know how to do decent work, and I'm just kind of trying to correct it a little now. But I think that came out pretty well. That was our little Saturday night at Frida's place. So here's what we're doing. This is something that we cut the candles on. In fact, I cut the candles on most of these. And I believe we're looking at, I haven't really counted them, I'm going to guess it's about 8 buds. And what our deal is to pick 2 that are of about the same strength that are opposed to one another. It could be this way, and we could, if we want to, wire it to go this way, or it could be, we could cut all of them and get 2 that are that way. But it helps if they're about the same energy, and it helps if they are either opposed to one another or can be wired in such a way as to look like they're opposite of one another. Get out of there. And in so doing, we get our little pair that's the beginning of how that. And with that, we make pads. That's what Pat is trying to say. From those 2 that we end up with left, we can create some pads. How are we doing on focus? Is that still kind of hanging in there? Yeah, it is. So I'm a little, ever so slightly challenged by the part where I don't currently have a tweezers in my hand, or I could hold those. I could grab it with the tweezers, bend it over to the side, and get a good, more precise cut in there. Instead, I'm just slightly more awkward holding camera. But I'm also left-handed and dyslexic, so and transgender, so it's not like awkward isn't something that I haven't come to know. We don't buckle when it's awkward. There we go. Got it out of there. Cut a needle off. I didn't need to, but I did get that bud out of there. Tweezers would have made that a little easier, but we did okay enough. And now my scissors smell like heaven. If heaven was a pine tree. Quick look. This is our Cork Bark Japanese black pine. I'm really happy with the way it's looking. It got watered. Everybody got watered early in the day, so that tomorrow when I get up, before I go to work, I will be able to water again before I leave the house. This guy could use some water. Could water this guy again, and that looks like it might have been trying to bloom, and I muffed it. I'm not sure. These guys are doing well. Our maples are doing well. So it's kind of skipping around a little bit, but as you see, I left those two little buds there. They are of equal energy, and at some point I can wire them to do something like this, and then we'll do their candles next year, and then that'll bifurcate off into half dozen more of those, and we'll cut those back to 2, and then we'll just keep going like that. And that's how we're going to keep going like that. And here's a look at thing 1 and thing 2 are little ponderosas. This one is Hoss, and this one is Babe. The needles are getting longer and longer on Babe because we just started feeding it. The needles are short, but getting a little longer on Hoss. Hoss had its needle treatment, and the older needles that are now third-year needles are showing the size that we wanted. Since then, it's got a repot, which was a slight up pot, and we're trying to settle back in, and it's really easy to overwater. Some things that don't like a lot of water after you repot, because there's more room in the pot for the roots to fill up, and they haven't filled that area up yet. So I worry about whether or not I've been able to keep the balance right or not. This one is a lot easier, and it still consumes water. This one I need to wait on in a little bit, and I never needed to wait before, but it used to be in a tiny, tiny underpotted pot, and water it every time you turn around was more correct most of the time over the answer that it's a ponderosa and shouldn't be watered as much. That was pretty, from what I could tell, we were doing fine when it was underpotted, but I still felt like that was a very risky proposition. Here are how our ponderosas are doing, and they all look to be green and happy. They get watered every day. We've got 6 here that we haven't. Is that right? Yeah. We have 4 in front of us that we've watered, and we've got 6 of us here on the second and third row that we haven't. So that's what's probably going to start being where our attention goes here in a minute. And other than that, I think that all turned out pretty well. I skipped decandling this literati Japanese pine, so our needles are a little long this year. I still think it's pretty. I can hang with that. Yeah, I can hang with that. I'm I'm not bumming by the way that came out. I think that's okay. They are a little long for my taste. We'll take it back next year and get those candles and start working them back. This is a quick look at the Corkus Subaru, the Cork Bark Oak, the Corkus Subaru that I put some wire to a couple of nights ago, and I took this branch down and I took two pads that were far apart and brought them closer together with some wire, just little stuff. Other than that, I cut some tips off of this guy, and yeah. Also, it had a little powdery mildew. I could see the bottom. It's more resistant to powdery mildew than some things, but I was noticing the bottom of the leaves. I didn't notice the top because they weren't totally infected yet, but I noticed that the bottom of the leaves had that white powdery look to them. So I treated that, and our coastal oak is looking good. Look at all the little salmon shoots coming out of this guy. It's just taking that little pruning we gave it and it's just turning right around and just totally giving back. Totally giving back. I could make a lesson out of our bald cypress. The one thing I always, if you've watched any amount of time at all, you've probably heard me say at least once or twice that if you can water these every day, you can keep them. Yesterday, when I walked out here on the balcony, I hadn't noticed before, but I had a lot of red foliage down in here. There's nothing left. I've came through and defoliated all of that, but it almost looked like fall came early, but it was only places here and places in here. And that was about it, but it was a lot of it. I can kind of show you can kind of see what's left where I went through and picked up. Oh, here's some here. Now, that's all the same tree, isn't it? It is, it's all the same tree. No, this tree's doing it too. Okay. So what is that? What's going on? I was like, what? Did you not water? Well, yeah, I always water. I water this thing every day. I probably didn't water enough because I've been wondering all day whether or not powdery mildew would, like, maybe this is the heavy canopy part of the tree. Maybe it doesn't get as much light. Maybe this gets extra humid after I water on a hot day and it kind of got powdery mildew or something. I was wondering why that area. You can still see some of that's kind of light green. This morning, the answer was shown to me. As I was watering, I saw shrinkage on this edge. So this is a big pot, and the roots in the couple of years that it's been there are probably, all the way down to the bottom by now. It might not be full, but it's there at least all the way down to the bottom by now. And I must have been watering fast, which probably doesn't make that much of a difference when in the winter and in the fall. But there comes a time when the cypress will pick up speed in the heat. It's a high water mobility tree. Japanese black pines are high water mobility trees. That means in the case of the bald cypress, its leaves are fine and light and airy, and it turns water to oxygen pretty quickly, which means it needs to uptake more water. Same thing with Japanese black pines compared to some of the other pines. Their needles have a thin coating, a thin skin, and it allows vapor to pass through its pores readily. Whereas my ponderosa, it has coarse needles. It's low water mobility. It's supposed to take up water more slowly. So to compensate for this, we have it in a substrate that's a little larger, a little chunkier. When I'm pouring it in the top, it's pouring out of the bottom. And then I believe the ticket we're on now is to not let it dry out completely, but don't just keep it soaked. So that's kind of where we're going with that. And the lesson that I was hinting at here is just I fill up a large watering can and I take it around the front, and then I take the nozzle around the back, and then I poke it through the slots in between the trees to make sure I got everything. But depending on how rushed I am, I might be doing that in too big a hurry. And I probably started underwatering, even though I was watering it every day. When we had our little temperature climb, our soil shrunk. And I believe that lines up with what I saw. Some of the lower branches, some of the stuff that was younger, easier, lower at the bottom, more vulnerable, was burned all the way off. All the way off, not a little, all the way off. Like that was. And see, where that little branch gets light, it stopped. But the part of it that was in shadow had dieback. So, being aware that something takes a lot of water, and being aware that you need to water something every day, and watering it every day, and you still can get caught out. The temperature can be higher. You can have developed a watering habit even when you're trying not to, and you start giving the tree the same amount of water that you gave it in the fall or in the spring, in midsummer, and you come up short. So that's my little lesson about what I learned this week, if that's for what that's worth. I think I nailed what that was. When I saw that hard line, I knew that further down in the soil, further down in the substrate, that block of akadama had shrunk. So the idea, you fix that quickly by watering it until water pours out of the bottom. And also on a bald cypress, if you get a bald cypress and it wilts over heat, or if you go to work or take off for a little while and you come back and your cypress is looking dead, defoliate it, water it, defoliate it, put it in the shade. That's how you recover one of those. I think probably Dawn Redwood would be the same way. Defoliate all the hanging down stuff, and then make sure that you've cooled it down from whatever it was that was ailing it. So you would water it, defoliate it, and put it in the shade, and then sit back, and if it's not too far into shock, it should start budding out pretty quickly. If not, when it comes out of shock, it'll start pushing back out buds. There are people who defoliate some of their bald cypress trees. I don't do that. I think it robs energy, but there are people who will do that and get a second flush out of their bald cypress. And even then, I think that there was a little thing going around where you would defoliate your American bald cypress on the 4th of July or some crazy stuff like that. Anyway, for a bench tour, that's a little bit. Those of you who saw us do the Shari last night, I think that was a good time to practice doing those. I have some more of those in mind. I would like to do a Shari on what I would think would be the exposed end here. I can see the bark. It spirals, and I'm really thankful. I was talking last night about, if y'all remember, we took some of our little seedlings there that we started with, and before we ever put a Q in them, we turned the base halfway around and we twisted the top halfway around in the opposite direction so that they have a full turn in them from top to bottom. And years later, you can see the results of that would be that we're going to see the bark doing a rotating pattern like that is whenever those little guys over there start doing that. But I would like to maybe from here to here do a little Shari maybe pick up this line right here with a Shari and then come up here and do it again. I think that would be really cool. Should probably practice on something freshly cut, so that I could be more confident about it when I do it, and I won't be all shaky. Also, the tool that I used last night, it may work better on something like this that's got some really thick bark, but I wasn't really happy. I thought the bark lifter could have been a little bit more of a lifter, a little bit sharper there on the end, but then too, I probably would have just cut myself with that. This is where I'm panning up to look at our Japanese black pine, and this is our side that we love, and you can see it's got really good color. It seems to be doing pretty well. I should do maybe a little bit more, a slightly bit more needle reduction on the top. Midsummer, I was just watching a thing where one of the pros advocates that on these trees. When they say that you can't do a candle cut every year for an elderly cork bark Japanese black pine, what they recommend you doing is go through to the strongest part of the tree and reducing your needle count slightly to be closer to the needle count of what's below it, so that we don't give up the stuff on the bottom. I wish I would have known that before this tree gave up the stuff on the bottom, because I totally had that going on last year and could see it happening and didn't know, and Googled it and still couldn't find a way out of it. And it was only after I saw a special on somebody maintaining their Japanese cork bark pine that even came up. What you just saw me do there wasn't a matter of real counting them out. I could see what's heavy, where they're the heaviest. So I just quickly grabbed a couple of the longest descended needles, and I don't really think that's quite what we need to be doing as far as being the most helpful, but I don't think it'll hurt either. And they are for now, while I'm doing this, looking at it, that would be the low-hanging fruit. Okay, the Ponderosa's looking good. The Maple's looking good. The 17-year-old from seed is looking good. The Dawn Redwood is coming out with another flush there where I cut part of that back. And I would like to see something lower. We still don't. We still do not. If you can move in. Lots more fleshing out there. We got a lot more going on there. We've got nothing coming from here. I would like it if it would. I think that would be nice if we could. So that's that. This is our wisteria from Clone, our little first bonsai tree. Its sister plant has already defoliated itself for the summer. That's what I would expect in this too, but it's kind of hanging on. They just kind of look ratty until one day they get hot or something, but then a lot of times they too will come out with a second flush of sometimes blooms also at the end of summer. All right, that's gonna wrap this up. That was 23 minutes of we did a little bud selection there. I've got that going on just like I like it. There are some more that we're going to have to do this to as they come up in their own time. I'll do that. And other than that, I think that's got us caught up until tonight or mañana, whenever we break out camera for something else. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. That will help our algorithm keep us moving. And we're somewhere around 650 subscribers, which I think is pretty awesome. I mean, if you really stop and think about it, that's kind of a lot of airplay. I mean, that's nothing, but on the other hand, that's a lot of people. Don't think about it, Pat. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and Frida appreciates you, and I hope you guys have yourselves a fantastic weekend.